Antonio Brown, trending in true crime, former NFL great. He faces serious legal trouble in South Florida, a far cry from his glory days.
I don't need recognition. I'm on a mission. I'm paying dues. I'm in position. I'm staying up. It's getting late. You're doing good. I'm doing great.
That was Antonio Brown in his heyday when he was on the cover of Madden 19, released back in 2018. This is the 37-year-old now, the former wide receiver, facing a top count of attempted murder. He appeared via Zoom in a courtroom on Wednesday after he was released. After the hearing, he was released on $25,000 bond with a GPS monitor. All of this is in connection to a shooting incident in Miami earlier this year. It was caught on video. Everybody had their phones out and were recording this. Brown fired 2 shots, which the victim claims one of the bullets grazed his neck. We're going to break down the incident in just a moment, but first, reaction to that bond, and he is out with the ankle monitor. Here to discuss criminal defense and civil attorney John Phillips, sports law attorney Dan Lust, and former NFL quarterback Charlie Batch. Charlie, I want to start with you and just talk about the impact that Antonio Brown had on the league. From a fan standpoint, he was something else. As an NFL insider and Pittsburgh Steeler insider, talk about this guy and how he changed the game in his heyday.
Yeah, this guy was unbelievable. And, I played with him for 3 seasons from 2010 to 2012. And to see him work on his craft, just to be, proving to people that he can play in this league, it was impressive by itself. But ultimately, when he had the chance to now earn that wide receiver #1 position, he probably had arguably one of the best 5 to 6 year stretches in the history of the NFL. And he earned all of that respect because of the work that he put into it. So he was fierce on the field, and he was probably one of the most feared guys of the 2010 decade.
Dan, he seemed to come a bit unhinged. Went to the Raiders, never played there, and ended up at Tampa. But there was something going on. What's your take in terms of your observation of his trajectory and sort of downfall?
Yeah, certainly. And obviously none of this is confirmed, but there's certainly a prevailing, we'll say, sentiment that Brown's career was derailed by head injuries, multiple head injuries that started in Pittsburgh and really derailed his career. And as Charlie mentioned, I think everyone would be in agreement that Antonio Brown was a consensus first ballot Hall of Famer until he left Pittsburgh. And these, again, not that there is a consensus on this and not that we would know. CTE is determined after someone passes away, but that is the prevailing sentiment, that these traumatic head injuries, repeated head injuries, forced Brown down a path that leads us to him, on the show today.
One could argue, John, that he was in Dubai sort of hiding out or running from this potential criminal prosecution. He was extradited, and here he is. He's out on $25,000 bond, not a huge amount. Your take in terms of the charge and the bond, and is he a flight risk?
Attempted murder carries about, I think, 15 years in Florida. He's hired Mark Eiglarsh, who's a good friend. Mark knows the media. Mark and I have been doing this stuff on TV for 15, 20 years. And Mark, I think, had a victory in court, getting Antonio home detention, getting him a lower bond where he can work on his, case from outside. The other side of the coin is, look, the video's out there. You can see the fight. And no matter what somebody says about who was the aggressor initially and whether he was trying to get his jewelry stolen, what I see is Antonio, being clear from the fight and then getting a gun and going back to it. And that doesn't fit stand your ground. That doesn't fit self-defense. Once you relabel yourself as the aggressor and have a reputation, like Antonio, as being very aggressive, probably like they said, with some correlation to CTE and brain injury, but it's going to be a battle throughout this case.
Let's take a closer look at the incident, which was picked up on multiple social media platforms. So what happened leading up to, this is what happens leading up to this shooting. There's an altercation, you can see it on Twitch and X. Brown is in a fist fight. Multiple people are trying to jump him, and he says trying to get his jewelry. He's the victim right here. And then things do turn. He reaches into his pocket there, you see the freeze frame there, grabbing the firearm, and then he's seen running after the victims and firing the gun twice. The defense says his actions were self-defense, that this was basically self-defense. The alleged victim's violent behavior, stating Brown was attacked and acted within his legal rights. So is self-defense viable or not? I guess that's the case, and John just talked about it. Charlie, you know him, you were throwing to him as a quarterback, and what is, if you could characterize his mentality in terms of a competitor, a warrior type thing, how would you describe Antonio Brown mentally?
Well, I think anytime you're playing professional sports, you have to be mentally strong because of all the distractions that occur, whether that's on the field, off the field, or vice versa. So I think ultimately what he built on the field, you knew he was mentally tough, but ultimately what did that look like as it relates to, the circle that he had around him to help make sure that they were navigating him into the right perspective? And watching this video, obviously it is disturbing by any means. And I think it's something that ultimately you hope that your day gets to court. But of course, when you're a public figure, you're guilty until proven innocent. So we're seeing all of this swaying our opinion, but yet when he gets his day in court, he'll be able to tell his side of the story.
And do you think, Charlie, that, if let's say you're in a, he is a target, right? And as an NFL quarterback, I'm sure you felt it, where people, they recognize you, some people want an autograph, other people want to mess with you.
It happens all the time, and that's the beauty. That's the beauty of a public figure. Yes, you get recognized. There are perks that come along with it, but yet on the backside, you lose your private life. But ultimately, as he was transitioning from the NFL to a music career, people still held him in that public light. And ultimately, sometimes your ego is at stake, or maybe you start believing in the persona that people are portraying for you, because I don't know Antonio as that particular person. I knew him those 3 years that I was there. He was at my house a lot with my wife, Latasha. He would come over and eat. We would fellowship, all of those good things. And ultimately that carried into what he was doing on the field. But what we're seeing now is not something that, I was accustomed to seeing at the early days.
Dan, how does a celebrity fare in court? Is it an advantage or a disadvantage typically?
I would say it's a mixed bag, but as Charlie mentioned with Antonio Brown, I think the court of public opinion is out on Antonio. You asked, how would you describe Antonio during his playing career? And I think Charlie is right, a warrior and all the normal characteristics of a football player. But in his post-playing career, and he's developed a very big social media personality, I would say he's erratic, he's unpredictable, and he's trying to, I guess, make a living on social media by standing out in probably not the best ways. So, yeah, I'm not sure that's going to help his case in court. Certainly the video does speak for itself, but people go in with the Antonio Brown's kind of baggage, and you could just look at the timeline of events from Antonio Brown dating back, 6-7 years, claiming to have been a victim of theft in the past. So, yeah, this is, I guess, somewhat of the same narrative for Brown, albeit probably the most serious charge he's ever been accused of. But, yeah, certainly Brown's reputation does precede himself.
Yeah, it's really heartbreaking on many levels. John, how does it seep into the courtroom, his struggles, the reaction to being jumped? One could argue that if you're hitting a bar and you go chase someone down and beat him up, that's fine, right? Ish. But he gets out the gun. That changes the. But can the defense be nuanced enough to get some sympathy for Antonio in his mental state as he's leaving that event, and he is now jumped, and it is very jarring, and his reaction was his reaction.
My kids would call this glazing, but he hired the perfect attorney for that. Mark Iglash, like, is positive and it has a great reputation, and like, just, you know, not even silver-tongued. Like, he's legitimately a nice guy, and so he'll bring up and coach Antonio Brown to be the best Antonio Brown. Now, again, all the stuff like that jury selection is going to be nuts, because you've got Trump politics, you've got all the things down in South Florida that you've got to take out of the courtroom to just determine whether this was a fair self-defense case or not. And it's real tough when you're away from a situation and go back to it or shoot your way through it to really call that self-defense.
Yeah, we'll see it all play out. For now, he is out on bail. Again, that happened yesterday. He'll wear the ankle monitor. Charlie Batch and Dan Luss, thank you so much for your time this morning. Appreciate it. We're going to get a break. Still to come, how will the Massachusetts mother accused of